Robert, just testing again that you can hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you. And then
Perfect.
Sarah, you are just connecting, but once you are connected, can you just confirm on the audio? We've just had a few technical issues here in Chambers lately, so I just want to make sure you can hear us and we can hear you. Perfect, thank you. Go ahead, Casey.
Good morning. This is the November 20th meeting of the Prince Edward County O.P.P. Detachment. I'm the Vice Chair standing in for Chair Chris Brainy. I'd like to start with the traditional land acknowledgement statement. We will begin this O.P.P. Detachment Board meeting by acknowledging that the County of Prince Edward is on traditional land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. We thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this land. Today, the County of Prince Edward is still home to many First Nations and Métis people, and we are grateful to have an opportunity to meet here, work, and continue stewardship on this land. Turning to our agenda, the third point is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'll move on. The confirmation of the agenda of today's date. It was published November 11th, updated November 18th. Could I have a motion to confirm today's agenda as transmitted? Rob, Sarah, seconding? Thank you. In terms of the minutes of September 18th, 2025 of our Detachment Board meeting, again, this has been circulated and published. Could I have someone move adoption of the minutes?
Sarah, it's your turn.
Thank you. And seconded by Sarah, thank you. All those in favor? Would be everyone. In terms of our presentation, we're joined today, I'm pleased to say, by Graham Wight, who is the Police Services Advisor, Inspectorate of Policing under Part 7 of the Community Safety and Policing Act. I've had the opportunity to hear Graham speak before, and a couple of things have always struck me. First of all, the clarity of his presentation, and also his sensitivity to the fact that after 35 years under the Police Services Act and its various amendments and incarnations, we are in a new era with the April 1st, 2024 proclamation of the Community Safety and Policing Act, and we're coming to grips with its nuances and its obligations on a board. And he has always exhibited sensitivity to the fact that there have been some growing pains, and we're kind of learning as we go. Graham, as you know, has a strong residential connection to the county, so we're very grateful that he's joined us here today. Graham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for the invitation to address the board here today. I think it's been a couple of years since I've been here. I think last probably talking about the transition, upcoming transition to the Community Safety and Policing Act, and today I want to talk a little bit about some of the board's responsibilities under the Act, and a little bit about what the Inspectorate of Policing does. So I'll start there, but thank you for the introduction. Again, for the record, my name is Graham Wight. I'm a Police Services Advisor with the Inspectorate of Policing, which is a division of the Ministry of the Solicitor General. The Inspectorate of Policing was born of the proclamation of the CSPA in April of 2024, and our role is one inherently to do with compliance under the Act, and my role in particular has to do with compliance and also sort of education, training, and understanding as it relates to the Act. So thank you very much again for the invitation here today. Wonderful to be with the board. I will say, by way of some general observations, I think what you folks have done to sort of grow into the detachment board under the CSPA has been wonderful. Clear to me that there have been efforts made to develop rules of procedure documents and policies under the CSPA to orient the board, sort of consistent with the membership and other duties under the Act, to understand the CSPA and sort of what your some of your peer boards are doing around the province. So it's been wonderful to see you folks at the O.A.P.S.B. meetings provincially and regionally. And I can tell that this board is doing a great job to build on what previous iterations of this board have done. So my compliment to this board, and by extension my compliment to previous iterations of this board and staff members who have supported the board in making great decisions. Obviously your transition to the CSPA landscape has not been as acute as others. The CSPA required municipalities to establish detachment-based boards around a detachment area, and luckily here in Prince Edward County, and I think there are a few examples in the province where there is one municipality and one board. So obviously the stretch has not been a far one for you folks, and I think you've managed the transition quite well. So I thought that needed to be acknowledged, as well as certainly with respect to the meeting here today. Nice to see these meetings in public space. You folks have done a great job, getting the agenda and some of the materials out to the public and to me ahead of the meeting, and making this an accessible place here at Shire Hall and also online for folks who wish to join. So, sort of a great job with the administrative aspects of your role. Happy to take questions from the group here today, from the board members and others about the inspectorate, about some of the board's duties. But I'll, for the purpose of managing time satisfactorily, I'll get on with my presentation. A few things I want to touch on today, an overview of the CSPA. I'll talk a little bit about the Inspectorate, what we do, policing landscape in Ontario, O.P.P detachment boards in particular. So happy to review some of your statutory obligations under the Act, and then happy to take questions as well. As you folks know, the Community Safety and Policing Act came into force April 1st, 2024. That is the current legislative framework for policing in the province, and it more so defines the goals of the Solicitor General under the policing landscape, and means to demonstrate respect for frontline policing, obviously strengthen public confidence in policing, and deliver quality and efficient policing and oversight in Ontario. The Inspectorate of Policing itself, as I've alluded to, is the compliance and oversight body who has a legal obligation to monitor and impact compliance around the province. This is sort of a net new entity. The Ontario Civilian Police Commission in the past sort of had some of these responsibilities, but they were generally amalgamated under the IOP at the inception of the Community Safety and Policing Act. And some of the things that we do: examine performance through inspections, investigations, research and data analytics, identifying effective performance and best practices, and ensuring that the sector is responsive to the diverse communities it serves. So we have a number of tools to do that, which I will touch on a little later in my presentation. But we intend to act like a sort of a small R regulator of sorts, in that we independently assess and monitor entities under the Act. We provide advice through people like me and others at the IOP. We monitor and conduct inspections of entities under the Act. You may see me from time to time at board meetings and in other places for more so a compliance purpose than an education purpose. At times, we investigate complaints, so the Inspectorate takes public complaints about boards and about police matters under the Act. We have a number of remedies under the CSPA to affect the matters that we see, up to and including removing boards, disbanding boards, removing board members, removing chiefs of police, and even potentially removing the commissioner if a matter was sort of at that level as well. So I think one of the things that I do want to note is that the Inspectorate of Policing, although we sort of act a lot like the Ombudsman does in the municipal world, I think we have powers and remedies at our disposal that are quite significant. Of powers of search and entry and seizure of materials and that type of thing, to make sure that what we're seeing in the policing landscape is consistent with the Act and regulations. So, you know, quite a robust portfolio built from scratch under the CSPA, and I will say the division itself, the Inspectorate of Policing, was something that the government built from scratch for this purpose. So obviously lucky me to be a part of it, absolutely. One of the notable aspects of what we do as well at the Inspectorate is that everything that we do is going to be publicly available. So our inspection reports, our investigation reports, other guidance documents are all meant to be public facing and publicly available. So you will see more and more of those on our website all the time. So far, you'll see a number of advisory bulletins and guidance documents. There was an inspection of the public order units in Ontario that was conducted previous to the inception of the CSPA by our group, which is publicly available on our website as well. And going forward, you'll see all manner of inspections, investigations, and guidance documents there, which again are meant to be all publicly available. Touched on a few of these responsibilities, but I will say that we have a number of units in the IOP. The liaison unit, that's sort of where I belong. The inspections unit, we have a couple of teams of dedicated inspectors who look at matters around the province in one way or another. Right now, we're conducting a comprehensive inspection in Thunder Bay as it relates to service delivery and governance oversight of policing in Thunder Bay. We also have a dedicated investigations unit for the investigations that we start. And I should say, with respect to public complaints, which was on the previous slide, but public complaints probably drive most of the investigations that we undertake. And so far, I think we're just under 1,500 public complaints since inception, April 1st. So I think that was a few more than maybe what we expected. Mm-hmm. And I will acknowledge as well, we have not advertised. We have not done any sort of public relations in drawing people's attention to what the inspectorate does to this point, although that is planned. So, you know, we see a world where we do receive a number of public complaints, and we have teams of inspectors and investigators that address those matters accordingly. We've also developed a First Nations Police Service Liaison Unit under the Inspectorate of Policing. As you folks know, one of the most amazing features of the CSPA is that the ministry spent almost a decade developing a system of opt-in for First Nations police services to opt into the Act, to be sort of seen as equal in the province in relation to policing, and so we have a unit to support, you know, First Nations services not only through the opt-in process, but on an ongoing basis by way of providing advice and engaging in inspections and investigations. So that's something we developed early, and we really see a lot of value in. A few of the things that I do in terms of monitoring local issues across the province, I read a lot of news, and I read a lot of minutes and agendas and that type of thing. I spend most of my time reading and understanding what's happening across the province, of course in Zone 2, which is Eastern Ontario. Which is sort of my assigned area, sharing reliable information with boards, assisting in navigating local issues, and then building and strengthening relationships are sort of generally the categories of activities that I spend my time engaged in. I'm going to flip ahead just for a second to show you the province and about how we're deployed. I'm happily deployed in Zone 2, which is Quinte West over to the Quebec border and up to Deep River. We have 6 advisors in the province, and yeah, folks are deployed in sort of those OACP, OAPSB zones to support entities across the province. Here in Zone 2, 19 O.P.P detachment boards, 8 police services, and 2 special constable employers is sort of who I spend most of my time working with, as well as the OACP and OAPSB zones. So it is busy at times. With respect to policing in Ontario, generally speaking, I think it's a neat reminder to reflect that we have 43 municipal police services in the province, and obviously the O.P.P on top of that. Across 63 O.P.P detachments, there are 88 detachment boards established, and then obviously First Nations boards as well. So there has been one First Nation that's opted into the Act, and that's NAPS Police Service in Northwestern Ontario is now sort of operating under the CSPA, which is a great news story, and obviously we have built the support in to make sure that those folks have what they need and can deliver great service. Some of the things about you under the Act as the O.P.P Detachment Board. Obviously, civilian input into how policing is provided is one of your core duties. The civilian governance aspect of what you do is absolutely important, reflecting the diversity of communities and representing local perspectives is what should be imbued through all of your work. As a board, you are established under the O.P.P Detachment Board regulation. Again, not much change for you folks because here in Prince Edward County there is one board and one detachment. But your responsibilities are clarified in many respects from the Police Service Act, and that is a few carry over and a few were, I think, strengthened in terms of their nature. Participating in the selection of the detachment commander is something that is a statutory responsibility and an opportunity for this board. Receiving regular reports from the detachment commander is something that again is a statutory responsibility for the board. Advising the detachment commander with respect to policing, determining objectives and priorities for the detachment, usually by assisting the detachment commander in the development of the strategic plan, monitoring the performance of the detachment commander, and then establishing policies with respect to the area policed in the detachment are all core statutory responsibilities of the board. What I will say with respect to policy development as well, the Act says that where a policy is fairly developed by the detachment board, it can provide direction to the detachment commander about how policing is discharged and in one way or another in the municipality. So the board has, I think, a lot greater autonomy in terms of how they work with the detachment commander and the O.P.P more generally about policing in the community. And I think there's some more some clarity around the criteria for providing direction to the detachment commander. I think that's significantly increased in the CSPA as compared to the PSA. So that was seen, I think, as an improvement by most folks. In some of these respects, monitoring the performance of the detachment commander, determining objectives, they require a little bit of work by the board, and I think this board is probably ahead of some others in establishing some policies around how these things occur. But all to say that the Act is generally silent on the how some of these things take place, and do rely on the board sort of coming to consensus about how it is that you achieve these ends. And I will say that boards like yourself who are engaged in the work, who are knowledgeable and sort of who take these responsibilities seriously, find a lot of value in these activities, and yeah, I think that's to be encouraged, absolutely. So a little bit about what it is that you folks do. I will say, with respect to receiving reports from the detachment commander as well, and I don't want to implicate the detachment commander in particular, but I will say that, for clarity, the O.P.P is a service provider, right? And so this board can request request and work with information from the O.P.P to satisfy itself that what it is receiving here in Prince Edward County is adequate and effective policing, and that it's consistent with community needs. So I think what some boards get used to is the more routine information that's provided by the O.P.P, and that's, I think, in most circumstances, excellent. And the O.P.P has done a lot in the last couple of years to standardize the information that's provided to boards across the province. Those efforts are absolutely commendable. But there are few limits on what the board can request and ask for and engage with in respect of their governance responsibilities. So what I would say is that if the board has a specific curiosity, if there are things happening in this community that the board needs more information about, there are a few limits about what it is that you can ask for, request from the O.P.P. To sort of satisfy yourself of the question in either respect. So I do encourage you to sort of to explore that with the O.P.P and through the detachment commander, understanding that most of, I think, what detachment commanders receive is from either from region or from GHQ, and sometimes the turnaround is not as immediate as it is in a municipal policing context. But certainly the access to the information that you folks have, with the strict limits that you're not providing advice about policing operations, anything else is really on the table. So I would encourage you to sort of continue to explore that realm. With respect to our oversight of detachment boards, some of the things that you will see me do: proactively monitor O.P.P detachment boards. We may initiate inspections in relation to detachment boards or board members where necessary, investigate complaints. Obviously, we receive a lot of public complaints annually, and then exercising powers to remedy non-compliance when that's relevant. Those are all things that we can do in relation to detachment boards. I will say there have been a number of complaints, just boards in general. There have been a number of complaints about board members. There have been complaints about decisions and policies of boards. So, I think what's changed in this context, in the CSBA context, is that members of the public, I think, have a lot more sort of immediate access to making a claim that the way a member or a board is working is not consistent with the Act, and the things that the Inspectorate do to sort of investigate, investigate, and to remedy the situation if relevant. Those are all public facing. So I think there's a lot of transparency around, a lot more need for transparency around what the board does, and I think in some cases boards ought to turn their mind to sort of what practices are best in that respect. So a little bit about what we do. I should say as well, the Inspector General does release an annual report, which we have released one for 2024. So we will publicly report on sort of all we do in the calendar year as well, for the public to consume. So that information will be on our website, and folks, that's a lot of information in a short period of time. But I'm happy to talk a little bit about the work of the IOP and what we do, and all acknowledging, I think, what this board has done over the last number of years, and several iterations of the board has been wonderful. Obviously, you folks were out front with respect to the conversation on community safety and well-being, with some of your plans, with how you've worked with other entities in the community, and obviously the previous detachment commander, John Hatch, was sort of a pillar of that work as well. So I think that you obviously have some great momentum, and you're capitalizing on that at this point. So all to be commended, and happy to take questions if folks have them.
Thank you, Graham.
and my apologies for being late. I sit on another board, which is our Southeast Public Health Board, and we had a little crisis this morning, so my apologies. Graham, when you mentioned 1,500 complaints, your eyes got kind of big, and I'm wondering if you could sort of elaborate on that a bit. Are there certain themes that are emerging from the complaints? How are they resolved, and along what response times? Yeah, maybe give us a little bit more, get more granular around that. Are they directed mostly at boards, or? No?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. I think my expressive face may have given away my personal biases about the complaints. I think if anything is sort of notable from my perspective is that we weren't sure how many complaints we were going to receive, and I think we'd sort of used some statistics and information from other oversight bodies to try to sort of avail ourselves of an approach. And I'm not sure that we expected as many complaints as we received, but so I think from April 1st, 2024, and these stats are maybe a couple of months old. So as of September, I think we were 1,340 complaints in the following categories. So complaints regarding the service delivery of adequate and effective policing, police service board member conduct, board policy or chief procedures complaints, matters related to incidents prior to the CSPA coming into force, disclosures of misconduct, officer conduct issues, which are usually or always referred to LECA. And based on those categories of sort of buckets of complaints, we have 132 active investigations in progress, and many more that are sort of in various stages of planning. So the complaints received are subject to different processes or outcomes, including investigations, of course, or issue specific inspections. Many don't meet our mandate and are screened out. The officer conduct issues are obviously are sent to the Law Enforcement Complaints Agency, who deals with those. So I think about 30% of our complaints are screened out and sent to LECA, and then some of them are refusals under a section of the Act, which sort of stipulates that the IOP can refuse to investigate something that's frivolous or vexatious, or sort of doesn't meet our mandate. But that's sort of generally where we stand at this point.
Follow up? Yes. Graham, many of us are new to this board. Has there been a history of complaints directed at this board in the past or currently?
So I'm not aware that there's anything that has been directed at the board currently. No, I have no information to suggest that there's anything that's been directed at this board currently, and I've been in this role in Eastern Ontario for 5 years. I don't know of any complaints that have been directed at the board previously, but there were. I mean, obviously the OCPC, Ontario Civilian Police Commission, would have received complaints under the old Act. That was part of a different ministry, so we would not have sort of automatically always heard if there was something, but I certainly don't, I wouldn't say there are any outstanding issues that I've been made aware of, and certainly my knowledge of you folks and how you work, it doesn't lead me to believe that there's anything that we need to continue to talk about, but of course happy to chat.
Sarah, Rob, any questions?
Yeah, maybe I could ask one. Thanks for your presentation. Apologies, I'm battling a cold, so my voice is a little shaky. Given the transition now under this new model, I think, what are some like pillars or maybe KPIs that you would be considering or tracking to see if things are not necessarily improving, but if we're meeting our priorities of, open, transparent, making sure that the public has trust in the police services and the work that we're doing?
Well, thank you very much for your question, and through you, Mr. Chair, to the board. I think acknowledging that boards across the province are at all different stages of development in relation to the CSPA. There are still boards who have not met. So maybe it's not healthy to draw attention to that, but I guess to describe the spectrum of boards that are operating or not operating now. We have boards, from one side that have not met or still sort of orienting themselves into the CSPA, and then we have boards that are much more so advanced. And I think I would certainly put you folks in the more advanced category. Some of that has to do with the degree of difficulty, though, and not to take anything away from the great work you've done, but there was not a reorientation of this board around a detachment area. Obviously, it was a 5-member board, continues to be a 5-member board, so that the transition was not as acute for you folks. In terms of KPIs, that's an excellent question, and some of the things that I acknowledged in my opening comments, which is generally at this point around good meeting practices, I think are things that you folks have done well. So transparency and accountability around the agenda process. Obviously, your agendas need to be produced and publicly available 7 days prior to meetings. These meetings need to be publicly accessible, whether that's sort of in this building or online. Your agendas, obviously, as a good practice, need to be fulsome. Supporting documents need to be in place. So your rules of procedure document, I should say, is incredibly important, and you folks have an excellent rules of procedure document in place. So, I think at this point, it's the administrative aspects of sort of the way that you work are important, and you've done very well in that respect now. Going forward, I think the sort of the next frontier for you folks is to make sure that the development of the next strategic plan reflects the needs of this community, and that you're having conversations with the detachment commander about the development of that plan. And then obviously, with respect to the selection of the detachment commander, obviously no secret that the O.P.P is thinking about placing somebody permanently here in Prince Edward County, and I know we'd all like to keep up the sort of momentum that we've had in place for a long time here in the county. So I think those are a couple of opportunities for the future. Your strat plan and then the detachment commander process are big ones for you. And then going forward from there, obviously your sort of performance conversations and feedback with the detachment commander, formalizing a process about how you do that. That's an excellent practice. And thinking forward about the future too. It is no secret that police budgets, generally speaking, don't seem to go down. So I think thinking forward about the future as a board, about what this community's needs are and what that would cost, and sort of more so forecasting what the O.P.P is thinking about. I mean, some of these conversations a little bit more existential in nature, but I think it behooves this board and others to be sort of asking about what the plan is and how many folks are going to be in a detachment, and some of these conversations about the use of special constables, I think, which municipal police services are doing to a significant extent, in some cases to increase resourcing, minimize costs, deploy folks in a way that's financially responsible. Those are all great conversations as well, and they're not, maybe statutory responsibilities of the board, but there's nothing that stops this board and this community from having those conversations with the O.P.P. and where you've got such a great relationship with the detachment commander and the O.P.P. too, which I think is in place here. I know was in place here. Those conversations are a lot easier than otherwise. So, keep up the great work, I think, is the short answer, and look to the future a little bit. I think in terms of the sort of budgeting and deployment piece, I think there's some value to be had there.
Rob.
Yes, Graham, I would just like to thank you for your coming back to our committee again, and this is your second appearance. And well, thank you for the updates, and it's great to see what's being implemented and all the checks and balances that you're putting in place. And I just hope that we can maybe schedule you for a couple of years down the road and just keep up the information flow between yourselves and our board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So I gather from your response to Sarah's question that it's a bit too early to establish across-the-board KPIs and sort of a standardized approach. But is the IOP engaged with, in your oversight role, with a development of best practices for boards?
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the board, I would say that fundamentally in our development as the IOP, we took on a number of responsibilities, and sort of 3 or 4 of them were, as I described earlier in the presentation today, the inspections, investigations, liaison work, and First Nations sort of orientation. That is about 50% of the folks who work at the IOP. The other 50% of the folks that work at the IOP are data scientists. And so fundamentally in our makeup, we designed a division of government from scratch, whose capability is probably more than 50% at times data scientists and folks who are creating best practices, KPIs, and other information, documents, resources to assist the policing community, generally speaking. And so you could imagine this work is not quick, at least at its inception, and sort of we've had to build databases, and we've had to build internal policies, and we've had to do a lot of sort of building in terms of wrapping our mind around how it is that we serve the sector. One of the first pieces of work I think that we have done that's been incredibly valuable is that we have surveyed the police community in Ontario, and we've asked sort of, where are you in terms of your development? What are the opportunities that you see in front of you? What are the challenges? What are the risks? And we've done sort of a jurisdictional scan of sort of where boards and services are around the province. Some of that just has to do with sort of mapping who's providing policing in this province, right? So I think our efforts at this point are to sort of capture what the policing landscape in Ontario looks like, capture what's going well, capture some challenges, and start bending our mind to how it is that we can provide research and analysis and best practices in a standardized way to the policing community. So we see ourselves going forward as a fundamental part of the solution and a fundamental part of professionalizing policing in the province. That work is incredibly valuable, and it's slow though. It's slow and methodical. I think that's sort of one of its characteristics. I will say though that it is amazing. We don't have a picture of at this point in history, we don't have a picture of what policing looks like in the province, right? So you know, for those of you who farm, I mean, you can go to the O.P.P website. Use this analogy all the time, but you can go to the O.P.P website and you can see sort of, you can click on an individual field and what was grown there, and you know, you have information about sort of you know, crops and yields and all sorts of stuff that's all publicly available. If a member of the public wanted to do that, you know, if I'm a member of the public or if I'm new to Prince Edward County and I want to know, you know, who polices here and how many people do we have, and, you know, what's the response generally like, that information is not easily accessible, right? So I think one of the things that we want to do is when we want to map what policing looks like in Ontario, we want to sort of develop a consensus of what's going well, develop a consensus of some of the challenges, and then turn our mind to information and research to support everybody. So we do see ourselves at the IOP as part of the solution and part of professionalizing policing. And more than 50% of us as a division are incredibly smart data scientists who love policing and are building all sorts of amazing pieces of research and information to assist the sector. So, Bill, great question, and happy to speak to it. I think it's something we've got a lot of pride in.
So Graham, are we a couple of years away from that catalog of best practices?
I think we may be sooner than that. I think based on the survey that we released to the sector, that would have been sort of the end of last year, we've started to collate some themes, and we've started to collate some themes and some sort of buckets of information that I think we've been thinking a lot about. So you may see things publicly available, in sort of the next 6 months to a year for sure. And then, I think what those products look like going forward, I think they get better, they get more professional, they get more specific, and probably will mean more specific guidance, even at my level, to boards about sort of what works well, what doesn't work, where the opportunities are. So, I think in the sort of 2 to 3 year time frame, I think we'll be a lot more hands-on in helping boards professionalize and be compliant and live best practices.
I think that sort of becomes essential for us building policies, to be able to have kind of the evidentiary base that the data scientists have worked with. So that's helpful. Graham, could you just comment, because I've heard you speak about it before, the issue of response times?
Absolutely, great question. The response times in particular, we have, just find my, the Inspector General identified in 2024 that this conversation around response times was one that he was interested in. And so we've been undertaking several, I think, really key steps to understand response times across the province. And so we've engaged consultations around Ontario with 13 municipal police services and the O.P.P. And so the objective of that research was to understand what sort of underpins response times and folks' understanding of response times across the province. After our initial consultation, we consulted the remaining 31 police services in Ontario, and some of the data scientists and others at the IOP actually did a few ride-alongs and went to the O.P.P sort of operations center and engaged in a lot of sort of field work to understand this response times conversation. And I think what we learned is that everyone talks about response times a little bit differently. And so whereas we set out, I think, to develop an inspection based on response times that was based on some principles, I think, that we thought everyone agreed to, what we learned is that I think we needed to do some more legwork to establish what those practices and principles are before we start the inspection. And I think our work will probably help to largely standardize that conversation about response times in Ontario. So we are undertaking some background research to develop an inspection on response times. What we want to do is we want to identify variations in terms of folks' understanding of the approach. We want to examine measurement and reporting processes. We're going to design the inspection sort of proper, and what we want to do is promote leading and best practices in terms of what we produce. So I think the outcome of the inspection, it will certainly speak to response times, but will also probably be a bit of a guidebook in terms of how the sector talks in the same language about response times. So, in some cases, the outcome is not that we're making response times faster, but we're setting sort of the stage for folks to talk about it in a consistent way to then sort of make response times faster. So our work is methodical at times and maybe slower than we'd like at times. But to your question, sir, Absolutely, we are undertaking a big piece of work in relation to response times that will likely turn into an inspection, and something that I think promotes good practices around the province. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Seconder, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a Bill and Sarah motion that the presentation by Graham Wight, Police Services Advisor, Inspectorate of Policing regarding detachment boards and the Community Safety and Policing Act be received.
All in favor? Thank you very much. I would just note that November is Women Abuse Prevention Month. Again, we're used to our discussions with respect to intimate partner violence as to the gender statistics with respect to the high proportion of victims who are female gender. So November is a month to recognize this. We've seen the release of the O.P.P statistics showing the increase in intimate partner violence reports from 2003 to 2004. The Metropolitan Toronto Police have just released their statistics, which also, quite unfortunately, reflect an increase over the past decade. So I think it's important to recognize the significance of November in our reflections on this subject matter. Second thing is Bill C-14, an act to amend the criminal code, received second reading in the House of Commons this week. It's now gone off to the committee where a lot of work will be done. It will deal with bail reform under the criminal code, and we see Federal Minister Sean Fraser, but also all the federal parties and the media, locally and elsewhere, talking about bail reform or the problems with bail. Is the bail system broken? It is a significant piece of legislation, Bill C-14, that deals with proposed amendments to I think to overgeneralize, to strengthen the bail system, and efforts to stop seeing individuals slip through into the release system who really ought to be the subjects of detention given their criminal profiles usually. And I would just note that this may be something for a presentation in the future, either from Assistant Crown from the Belleville Crown's office that covers Prince Edward County, and perhaps from the O.P.P. And I know bail compliance is an issue that Jeff McKinnon has dealt with in his draft local action plan. So I would just note that as well. Oh, okay. I'm so used to being heard in a room without a microphone. Sarah, Rob, any verbal updates that you want to add in? Nope. Okay. Bill? Okay, thank you. Can we move on to the items for consideration? Hillary? We have the report of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Project. As you know, the board released funds from its budget for work by the CWSP, and this was the opportunity for a report on that. Good morning. Good to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the board, I'd just like to highlight a couple of things. First and foremost, we have over 40 community partners now sitting at the tables of the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. So we've made a very concerted effort over this past year, excuse me, to seek out those folks who maybe had stopped participating actively and needed to be brought back into the fold, as well as identified gaps and opportunities in partners who should be included. And of course, a number of those are folks who may have their home base on over a bridge somewhere, but they serve Prince Edward County residents. And so we've worked administratively to make sure that those meetings are accessible, held hybrid. So we've had a greater increase in attendance by making that change. In terms of the report and the expenditures, there's a couple of things I really want to point out that are big victories, I think, being able to have these funds available. When you speak about domestic, intimate partner, and sexual violence, of course, we have one of our priority areas stacked with a number of community partners working in that field. And so by having access to funding, they were able to revamp, revise, update, and provide the red card resources on a keychain. So now they're available by QR code. It's more subtle, it's transportable, and our community partners who received those have been able to issue pretty much all of them. So that was a key marker that required funding in order to be able to make that happen. Another big exciting thing that's actually coming up a week from today is the first Youth Mental Health Resource Fair in partnership with PECI. So a subcommittee of our Mental Health and Problematic Substance Use Action Team have come together, those that primarily serve youth. And it's been a true collaborative project, which has been inspiring. So we're excited to be offering an entire day of mental health resource activities, engagement, introductions to other community partners, like the Rotary Club of Picton will be there with some volunteer opportunities and engagement. And so we'll reach 700 youth between grades 7 to 12 at PECI next Thursday. And again, that required funding to be able to make it happen. And so we're thrilled to be able to launch that and anticipate tremendous success from that event, and ideally be able to provide busing so we can get the grade 7s and 8s next year to PECI so they can also participate and have access. So it's a bit of a pilot project, but it's going smoothly, and there will be popcorn. So we feel like that's going to be a win. For the poverty reduction work that Council just approved, our Bridges Out of Poverty model as the framework, we're thrilled to be working with Prince Edward Learning Center. One of the things that they identified as an agency that serves some of our most vulnerable residents is that folks who are eligible for the disability tax credit were unable to access it because of the barrier of the cost for a physician signature. So that $150, in some cases, barrier prevented them from having $200 more a month in their pocket to function with. And so we piloted a project with the Learning Center, and it was a real win in my mind, because that was an agency partner bringing forward an opportunity that required some financial support and made a big difference for a number of residents in our community. And so I just highlight that as well. And that's kind of it for me, unless there are any questions.
Hillary, not so much a question, but a commendation. You may recall that earlier in the process, I had some concerns about the migration of the community wellness program out of the domain of the O.P.P, essentially, and into staff. And you have totally alleviated those concerns. You've done an incredible job with regard to just what you just said, intimate partner violence, mental health, poverty, the number of partnerships you've established. I've been to a few of those meetings. I'm really impressed. I think we're going to have a luncheon or something down the road. I'm really excited about attending that, because that's where we'll all talk about it. So I just wanted to underline that you've done a great job, and
Thank you.
I think we're all appreciative, but I certainly am appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, Robert, questions for Hillary? I would certainly echo Councillor Roberts' observations with respect to the way this is expanded and been implemented. It's just really, really superb. Could you tell us a bit more about the next Thursday PCI event, and in terms of subject matter presentations and the like?
Sure. So through you to the board, the concept of youth mental health has been ever brought to light in our community and beyond. I spoke at the Rotary Club of Picton and Wellington a couple of months ago. Both of those service clubs are really focused on youth mental health under their current presidents. I have a son in grade 9 at PCI, and so I'm constantly aware of what's happening. Through the action team conversations, a number of those partners that do serve youth in our community furthered that need for a more proactive approach to mental health supports becoming available. We know that the children's mental health wait list is 3 months here. So if you have a young person in crisis and that's the only access to a resource they have that is at no cost, that's quite a delay. To no fault of children's mental health, but that's just part of the reality of an access to service issue. And so it started a dialogue about how could we kind of get creative and think outside the box. And rather than having young people wander through PCI because they're voluntold they have to do so, and it's very regimented and dull and they get nothing out of it. Picture an entryway with balloons and tinsel, and they will all receive a green bracelet with the hashtag Be Kind to Your Mind that was developed by youth in the community in partnership with the Youth Center at The Rock. Yeah, that's right, we all could. And staff and students that day are going to be asked to wear green as the official color of mental health awareness. The Rotary Club is supported with some gift card purchases, so they're going to be throwing out some trivia and offering opportunities to get involved in the communities. Next year, we see this advancing to more of the folks like our theater clubs that offer free opportunities for young people. Really hard because those are all volunteer-based, so getting those folks on a Thursday to represent is a bit tough, but we'll work around that for next year. Children's mental health, obviously, there's going to be a photo booth in partnership with the Department of Illumination with some props, so really just trying to make it fun in that regard. Some of the other municipal departments will be represented to share about opportunities to get involved. My colleague in community services programs and initiatives will be there to explore the youth engagement approach that council has directed us to look into. So the idea is for it to be light but informative, and also an opportunity to receive some feedback. So we'll be asking for those young people who come through to identify anonymously what do they feel are the primary issues affecting youth mental health in Prince Edward County. What are the barriers to accessing services, and what could we do to improve as a community for their benefit? So I'm really excited to receive that feedback, and as a longtime youth advocate, I will be happy to bring that back to the board in the future and to the public at large to challenge us as the adults to make some change for young people in our community. So we're really excited about it.
So you foresee doing an exit report, sort of summarizing how it's gone and forward-looking then?
Absolutely. So the idea would be who was missing in terms of a partner that could have been there, and that's why we really tried to broaden the scope rather than it just being the very obvious resources there. We wanted to indicate to young people there are opportunities to be engaged here in other ways, but also we know maybe transportation is a barrier. And so if the feedback we receive is, I'd love to be part of the Marysburg Mummers, but getting to Milford isn't possible for me or my family, that's information we can take back and look at as a community, as a municipality, and what can we do to put those things in place so there aren't any barriers.
Thank you. Any other questions for Hillary? Bill?
Thank you for that answer. Just could you tell us a bit about, because you mentioned your long-time commitment to youth in the county. How are we engaging Rock and County Kids Read and Reaching for Rainbows? in others.
Absolutely. So all three of those agencies you just mentioned are active partners in the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan action teams. We're pleased that County Kids Read is one of our newer partners this year in the poverty reduction action team specifically, and so they've been an active partner. Reaching for Rainbows, because they reach a very specific demographic, aren't directly involved in this youth mental health resource fair opportunity, but they do provide feedback to the action team. Beth LaFay, the executive director, has identified the strategy in the current iteration of the plan that talks about youth bullying is a piece that really speaks to her and the young ladies that she and her agency serve. And so as part of the preparation in evaluating the current plan, making a plan for monitoring the next iteration and preparing the next iteration itself, we're really looking at youth-specific strategies. As you know, we don't have something currently identified as a priority area specifically to youth as it is. And so there's some discussion in-house among the action teams in preparation. Do we identify youth as its own priority area, or do we look at breaking out the demographic for the existing priority areas and how they affect youth, the general adult population, and seniors? Since we know something like domestic and intimate partner violence affects an age range that's vast, does it make sense to maybe have folks coming to the table as they address age ranges versus priority areas? Now, I think we're in a place where those things, mental health is affecting young people. Poverty obviously affects young people and has a trickle-down effect, and is a bit of an umbrella over the rest of the action, the rest of the priority areas. So we have pretty much like everyone I could possibly think of at the action team tables participating as it suits their agencies and their mandates. And that's also why having pockets of funding to support that work enhances it. So it's not just something that's expected of our agency partners to find more funding, for which they rarely have, or work that's being done off the side of their desk. It enhances their mandate and their mission in the community, and also reinforces that there's a community rallying behind that work to support in maybe some not so obvious ways, which has been part of the brilliance of this past year in observing the CSWB action teams.
Thank you. Small follow-up.
Good answer again. How extensive is that outreach? I'm thinking about this season that's coming up, the Christmas season that's coming up. I was over at Angel Tree the other day and picking up my child, my youth person, for gifts. And two of the volunteers were there and mentioned to me that there may not be enough gifting coming from the Angel Tree to cover all the needs in the county with regard to children who are coming from a low-income environment. Is that too specific for us to be involved in? I mean, I would think that addressing poverty and mental illness in this holiday season, it would be nice to open something for, and that seemed, from what I saw on the tree, it's from children 4 to 18. I mean, it's quite a span. Is that too specific, outside the guardrails of what we're doing here?
So through the chair to the board, it is specific. However, if we look at something like the community action projects, so these were proposals that were sought out from the community on initiatives that brought residents together, were indicative of work that was going to be done that would enhance the community as something that aligns with one of the priority areas. And the Christmas Tree Angel program would be one of those things. I think there's opportunity I'm discovering, certainly as I speak to service clubs, and I have many folks in the community basically waiting for me to say, here's what you could do. That's the question I'm constantly getting. I'm out advising people about the work that's being done at the agency in social and human services sector, but residents themselves want to know how they can get involved in that work, made evident by the 150 people who registered to participate in the Bridges Out of Poverty community-wide training at the end of October. We've got a really passionate and generous community just kind of waiting in the wings. And so I think the work that the community safety wellbeing partners could do is be promoting that as a need, particularly related to poverty reduction in our community. We could be supporting the work of the Christmas Tree Angel program and volunteers in getting the word out to residents. I've got a community mailing list now that's well over 60 just general residents who have indicated at some point or another in the last year, please let me know what's happening and how I can help. Through our 40 partners, we've got 100 plus people listed on that mailing list. We could also be sending out on their behalf. We have a need here. The Rotary Clubs, again, I come back to. So although we don't have an initiative specifically right now about the Christmas Tree Angel program, I would say the work of the Poverty Reduction Action Team aligns with supporting something like that and would be something that that team would speak about in the future about how to get behind a volunteer drive of that nature that's got, I think, 40 plus years of history in this community. It'd be really interesting to share publicly for leading into next season about how that need has grown when we know there's at least 400 children and youth in Prince Edward County living in poverty, and kind of painting that picture for residents to understand here's where it started and why it was necessary, and here's where it is now, and how can you be part of that movement.
Sarah, do you have a question? Could I have a motion that the board receive report CSP 27 for 2025 for information? Can I have a mover? Bill? Carried. Can I have you stay for just a minute, Hillary, and thank you for the presentation on that. Moving to 10.2, the Mad Canada report that was circulated, the top 10 report. This came from Hillary, I think, initially, and just refreshing your memory, she had written to us on September 22nd, and she'd also included this in her memo. The Mental Health and Problematic Substance Use Action Team within the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan reignited the partnership with Mad Quinty this spring. Their volunteers were supported through the CSWB to be present on site at various farmers markets over the summer, thereby increasing their visibility in our community. Through this, there are some folks willing to share their stories regarding the impact of impaired driving on their lives. This is an avenue we could explore as a potential community initiative if there was interest. Did you want to add anything to that? And thank you, of course, for circulating the report, Hillary.
Thank you. Through the chair to the board, I would just add that the Mental Health and Problematic Substance Use Action Team, as I previously mentioned, has pivoted their efforts over the past couple of months towards addressing youth mental health specifically. And that initiated a conversation with Staff Sergeant McKinnon and I about how we could look at O.P.P and community connecting to address impaired driving in our community. So I think it's a work in progress in terms of how it folds into the community safety well-being work. And I think there is opportunity there. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like just yet. It's based on the level of interest of the action team members. But I do think we could work from a community initiative standpoint, even separate from that, to partner with the O.P.P and really address what we know is a glaring issue in our community from the ground up. And by having some of these folks through Mad Quinty, whose lives have been heavily impacted, be offering to make themselves vulnerable to share that story with the community, I think is an avenue worth exploring.
Thank you, that's helpful. Any comments before we have a motion to receive the MAD report? Could I have a motion then that the discussion regarding the MAD Canada's top 10 report, municipal measures to minimize impaired driving and support victims and survivors, be received? Bill moved it, seconded by Robert. Thank you. All in favor? A very unanimous group. Thank you. Turning to the O.P.P. Detachment Board operating statement for the period ending October 25. That's been circulated. And are there observations or questions on that document? Can I just, through to the Secretary of the Board, grateful to Councillor Roberts for having circulated in the past month a media report, one of many that we see, but more so last year, relating to the increase in O.P.P. Charges to municipalities arising out of the collective agreements of 2024. There was a rebate last year to try and offset the escalating costs. And I'm just wondering how that's factoring into the preparation of the budget that we're looking at here.
Through to the chair, or vice chair, that would be a question for the municipality's treasurer. My understanding was that rebate was just for that initial year, just because it was such an increase and in order to offset it for the municipalities. However, I'm not privy to the information as it's being presented at the municipality's budget.
All right. Anything else on that?
Maybe we should ask.
Well, I think we should know in terms of the cost figure we're seeing for transfer from the municipality to the O.P.P. with respect to officers and staff costs for the Prince Edward County O.P.P. detachment. I mean, this is all in the shadow of the unconstitutional bill, as we now know it was, capping public service compensation at 1% for a number of years, and then various bargaining groups, quite deservedly so, trying to catch up for what had happened to them. So we see these higher step-ups in the shadow of the Ontario Court of Appeal having finally pronounced on the matter. So that would be helpful. Thank you.
And sorry, just to confirm, this is for the 2026 budget,
Exactly.
not the 2025 operational?
2026.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you. Can we have a motion then that the O.P.P. Detachment Board operating statement for the period ending October 25 be received? Robert is moving that. Seconder? Bill, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Turning to Staff McKinnon, the verbal report with respect to the complaints and secondary activities issues. Go ahead, Jeff.
Vice Chair, thank you. One conduct complaint for this period, reporting period, and four for the whole year to date right now. Secondary activity, just one still, and it's one of the officers who's a reservist with the Canadian Air Force.
Thank you. Any questions for Staff McKinnon? Bill?
Could we know what the complaints were?
Generically?
I believe they're just, they're conduct complaints, but I believe the most current one is just a neglect of duty as an investigation someone wasn't happy with. So it's currently under investigation. I really don't know until I get the report back, you know, whether it's substantiated or not substantiated.
Thank you. Can I have a motion that the verbal report from the detachment commander related to Part 8 complaints and Section 89 secondary activities of the Ontario Community Safety and Policing Act be received? Bill moving, seconded by Sarah. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Jeff, did you want to speak then to your detachment commander's report September through November 2025, which we have circulated in our minutes?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I've done it in this format just to make it more palatable for the board, easier to get through some of the data that's in the actual report. Sorry about that. Traffic enforcement and collision overview. So our collision statistics overview from this reporting period, our collisions decreased by 46.2% compared to the previous year. Now with that comes increased enforcement and increased education. So traffic charges have gone up, but also the warnings have. So we are doing a very good job at kind of balancing the enforcement and the education part, which is certainly showing in our collisions. The severity of collisions, we had one fatal. It was classified a fatal in September, but it was a medical issue, but we classified them fatals because it was a motor vehicle, but it was deemed to be a medical distress call. 39 property damage collisions. Causal factors, there was nothing really identified as an issue. And year-to-date collisions totaled 250, which is again a 34.6% reduction from the previous year. Our criminal and provincial charges, total of 470 charges were laid from September to November 2025, marking a 9.6% increase over 2024. Traffic-related charge increases, speeding, impaired driving, and distracted driving. I believe we had 22 impaired drivers this period, which is an increase of 22.2% over 2024. That's still a disturbing number. But our mandatory alcohol screening has certainly gone up. It's been something that's being reinforced with all the platoons. They're daily, and that message is starting to get out there that if you go through a ride program in Prince Edward County, you will get tested. So that is a positive trend, I guess. And those numbers are certainly reflective of the board's concerns as well as the community concerns. Our crime statistics, violent crime incidents decreased by 23.7% in the fall and 5.9% reduction year to date. That is due to most likely investigative excellence. Our DAI is back full time now dealing with the domestic issues and supporting our victims. I did kind of delve into the domestics a little bit because it's not covered in the O.P.P report, but 67 during this time period, 37 this time period in 2024. That is not a positive number whatsoever, and there needs to be some more work done there. So what I plan on doing is just exploring some more supports with alternatives for women, try to come up with a plan, as well as Hillary with the community safety well-being in that pillar, seeing if there's more that we can do outside of traditional enforcement. Property crime, there's been an overall reduction in property crime by 51.6%. There's only 45 cases reported during this reporting period. Theft and fraud, specifically fraud, still is an ongoing issue and needs more public education. I've also covered that off as an action plan commitment. Minimal break and enter cases, I would suggest that's due to just the population that was here during the time. As we move into the winter months, there needs to be more proactive patrols in this area to keep that number down, because traditionally when those cottage areas are empty, that's when we start getting those cottage break and enters in summer homes and whatnot. Drug crime, significant reduction, but I think there are some reporting issues there because it's not reducing. We just did a large warrant in the town of Picton with a significant amount of cocaine, cash. So there's still some work to be done there. I don't know why it keeps showing very low. So that's something more that I have to explore with our community street crime unit.
Just stopping there for a moment, that's something we highlighted obviously in our
Yes.
April discussion paper, and I think it came up at the September board meeting, that this would make us kind of a worldwide model for no drugs, which no one really thinks is realistic. And the arrest that happened this week in Picton, I think just reflects that there are users and there is trafficking, and it's there. The issue is how to crack through and with interdiction strategies. So I appreciate your comments.
And with that too, we have some more specialized courses for frontline members. So just relying on the community street crime unit all the time, there's a lot of lengthy investigations, lengthy surveillance and all that sort of stuff. If we train more officers in that, looking beyond the traffic stop, you know, you're not just stopping and giving a ticket. There's some indicia there of drug trafficking, then teaching an officer how to deal with that and the tools that he has available or he or she has available to them is what I really want to get into moving forward into next year. Operational metrics. Clearance rates, violent crime is down. Those are iffy ones, just depending on where cases are within the courts, whether the O.P.P deems them as resolved or cleared. Property crime clearance rates are also down. Drug crime, again, that's a whole different animal when it comes to clearance rates. And driving offenses, of course, are very high with the clearance rate. Violent crime clearance rates is something to be explored as well by me to see where we're going and how these cases are working their way through the courts. Mental health and overdose calls. Between September and November, we had 39 mental health related police calls recorded, including suicide attempts and mental health act cases. We had one fatal opioid related overdose, which was reported. And again, it just stresses the importance of collaboration both with our impact team and our mental health professionals, as well as the community safety well-being plan. I mean, there are some avenues in there to work through those. Youth charges, very low. They dropped to 0 in the fall of 2025. Year to date shows 16 youth charges with a mix of convictions, diversions, and non-convictions. Public complaint status we've covered off. Victim services, we've had 143 referrals made between September and November, which with a 24.1% acceptance rate, which is low, and I think that's where I want to get into with the IPV, as well as like the victim assistance with alternatives for women and our court system to see if there's more that we could be doing there to get the acceptance rate of victim assistance up. Patrol hours, total patrol hours were 1,959 between cruiser, foot, and marine patrols. That number is down somewhat compared to last year. To delve into that, I believe it's some issues with our reporting, with our daily activity reporting. So we have very specific measurements that we're doing through the service delivery model through the O.P.P, and it's very what we call it's run through the daily activity reporting system. If officers aren't being accurate with what they're reporting, it could be community engagement, it could be patrol, it throws the numbers off. So that is something we're working with each platoon, each sergeant to audit the daily activity reporting system monthly with the officers to look at, are there inconsistencies here? I mean, I've seen it in my position. If I go in and do a spot audit, I've seen an officer who I know is out every day working and their patrol hours are very low. So that's just, they're not accounting for their time properly, and that's something to work through. And that's a common theme across detachments and across when we start looking at the service delivery model targets that we should be meeting for the O.P.P. That's everything that I have, unless there's any questions.
Questions? Bill?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I'm not really sure how to put this in a question, but my instinct tells me that there's a meaningful, sadly, a meaningful Venn diagram overlap between human trafficking and the drug crimes. And I hear things about STAs being used for both those purposes. I hear about a rental property on Main Street, Picton, occupied by bikers. Of course, I think everybody's heard about Old Cheese Factory Road and that. Can you confirm or deny my instincts that there's a relationship there? And if there is a relationship, what are we doing about it?
I believe in other municipalities, I have heard of relationships between short-term rentals. I can't deny it or accept it. They're difficult to get people to speak if you go in the middle of the night to a noise complaint at a short-term rental, and maybe there are indicators there that something is going on, but it's getting someone to talk. So what we've done here, I have a member right now on a temporary assignment with the Human Trafficking Unit. So not only for her own career development, but when she comes back, now she has a specialized set of skills to come back here and start looking at some of these issues, because you're not wrong. I believe, just based on my policing experience, that those incidents within short-term rentals and in the drug culture, they are occurring. It's just to have specific examples, I do not have them. But I believe in years past, prior to me, yeah, there has been a few incidents where they have been questionable and we have investigated. I just don't know how far they got with it. But having someone trained in human trafficking, having that specific set of skills for warrant writing and whatnot is going to benefit the detachment. So I've just extended her for another 6 months just to get more experience within that unit. And it also is benefiting them, having that extra person.
Go ahead.
That's great. So that's sort of going to happen soon.
Yes.
Great. And the biker gang aspect?
So they had their, I believe it was a national barbecue on Cheese Factory Road. So in that, our biker enforcement unit, the Quebec biker enforcement unit, were here. I had members assigned to do traffic, as well as our emergency response team members were in and around the area. There was no calls per se concerning the bikers, but there was a lot of traffic enforcement done. There was a lot of, in that culture, there was a lot of traffic infractions that occurred. So we did, I believe we laid 14 or 15 in a few hours on them coming into the event. The biker enforcement unit monitored it. They knew they were there, took pictures of everybody, their intelligence gathering, and it's not something that we want in our community. It's just how do we branch out? How do we work with our biker enforcement unit to see what options we have? But right now, we don't really get called out there. I mean, even when they have a massive event like that, there's no real calls for service besides maybe the odd traffic issue if they were parking on Highway 62 because there wasn't enough room on Old Cheese Factory Road. But still, it is organized crime. It is in our community, and it needs to be addressed.
Other questions for Staff McKinnon? I would just say, Jeff, thank you for picking up on the issue of identifying within the violent crime sort of category, which were intimate partner violence related, because I know the statistics that are created are either district or GHQ, and they don't go that next level to actually show amongst violent offenses which fall into that category, which is an issue the board has raised before, wanting to know that. So I appreciate you picking up on that.
And with some of the ideas I have, I mean, we are getting a new Crown Attorney in the very near future in December. And I know you brought up about the community impact statements. I think that's something I want to explore with him and see where we can go with that, because it can only help in the prosecutions of some of these offenders, as well as our offender management apprehension program. We will be having a full-time member. I'll be doing the interviews most likely, I believe, early December, I believe. And they'll want that person in place by January. There'll be specialized training, and that program is going to expand. and having a full-time OMAP coordinator that works with our DAI and our CSCU units, monitoring and tracking those offenders and ensuring compliance, as well as having that robust relationship with probation and parole, I think is going to benefit the community as well.
Thank you. We'll look forward to coming back to that in the future then. Can I have a motion that the detachment commander's report September to November 2025 to Prince Edward County be received? The mover, Bill, seconded by Robert. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 10.6 on our agenda is the update from Staff McKinnon with respect to his progress regarding the local action plan. I had a brief discussion with Staff McKinnon before the meeting commenced as to whether what's occurring today should be identified as receiving an update on the commander's local action plan, subject to a formal submission at the February 19th meeting, or whether we should treat the document that has been circulated as his formal submission today. The reason this makes a difference is Section 70(5) of the Community Safety and Policing Act gives the board 60 days to give its comments to the detachment commander, which would fall 60 days from today's date if we treat it as the formal submission of the local action plan today in January, when we don't have a meeting, and it would require either a special meeting or some way of determining how the board's comments were conveyed. If we use the model of receiving this draft as an update of his progress with the formal submission at the February 19th meeting, 56 days from then would be our April 6th meeting, when we could formally provide the board's comments within a 60-day cycle. So I've asked the staff whether he'd be comfortable with us receiving what we see today as his update on his progress working on the report. The statute doesn't indicate when the local action plan has to formally be locked down and published on the internet and whatnot. So I think the model of receiving it as an update as opposed to a submission does work today. Much of this has been driven by the O.P.P strategic planning branch, who have over time moved the time markers to suit themselves. So without wanting to be too blunt about it, it's not my problem that they're setting a certain chronology. So staff will let you speak to that issue, and also the update, as I'll call it, that you've put before us.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I'm guided by our strategic planning bureau, who are telling me kind of the rough dates when it needs to be put in by. I believe the published date that the O.P.P had was somewhere in March. So that's where I'm guided by. Unfortunately, it's not, like you said, it's not lining up with what the Act dictates. The work that I've put into it was based on the submission from the Vice Chair, the working paper when it comes to drug enforcement, IPV, as well as impaired driving. So I've worked that into the crime, traffic, and community engagement part. Consultation-wise, we met with, I thought it was important after meeting with Hillary Fennell and the Community Safety Wellbeing Chair, that youth, we need to focus on youth when it comes to the community engagement part. So I had the community officer go to each school, instead of just going to a school board, getting their input, getting it from each local school, the principals and staff, what they wanted to see from the O.P.P. And it was a resounding, they want to see police stop in, make those contacts with the kids outside of regular calls for service, which makes sense. I mean, if we're always being that reactionary force showing up at a school when there's a call for service, it doesn't bode very well with the kids. So if we take the time to get in the schools and build those relationships like we used to do years ago, I think it goes further with supporting the kids. When it comes like impaired driving, I'm focusing on mandatory alcohol screening and some more specialized training. We've discussed the DRE program, and there are some hurdles there to come over and some challenges. Crime-wise, again, it's just supporting the victims of crime and meshing that with the IPV areas as well as the O.P.P areas, working with the DAI to make sure that we're monitoring those offenders that are out. Again, community engagement, I've left it quite open, so we can add more to that when it comes to that and community engagement part, who we're meeting with, and some of the activities that we're going to do, or they can kind of get worked into that plan later as well, you know, as we move through, and then we can report on that with the annual report. I don't know if there was any concerns with what's in it right now.
Well, we've received it obviously very recently, so just speaking for myself, I thought it was quite responsive to the September 18th board's adoption of its objectives and priorities. I'll obviously want to have a finer go at it. My colleagues on the board, any questions for Staff McKinnon? I think I would propose that the motion for today's date be as it's set out in the agenda, that this be an update from the detachment commander regarding the progress of the local action plan be received, as opposed to formal submission of the plan with a view to formal submission taking place at our first meeting in 2026, so that we're able to do the 60-day cycle within our first two board meetings of the new year. And I think we'll have something to give you for the April 6th meeting. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of revision, quite frankly, Staff McKinnon. But I think that's a way of meeting our 60-day cycle under the statute.
Thank you, and a fulsome review does certainly help me.
Yes.
You know, go forward with the plan.
Thank you. Bill.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to ask a question about something I know very little about. Your action plan references waterways and quite
Trails.
Correctly cites 800 kilometers of Lake Ontario and Bay of Quinte shoreline. And I think it was in the late summer, I was in conversation with an emergency response team officer who said that they were very much involved, as I understood it anyway, very much involved with monitoring traffic on the water. And we didn't have the opportunity to actually chat about what that actually meant. But are you aware of our ERT people, officers, and what they're doing with regard to waterways and the Bay of Quinte and Lake Ontario? And is this related to trafficking? Is this related to tariff issues? I just wanted to understand that.
I believe it was related to Operation 3D, which was the RCMP and the Border Patrols, strengthening our patrol of the border. So they were assigned here certain times, and that's what it's from. Marine-wise, we just have our full-time local officers doing the full-time marine, but that would have been why the emergency response team was in and around the area.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Can I have a motion then that the update from the detachment commander regarding the progress of the local action plan be received? Bill moved, seconded by Sarah. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The 2026 proposed statutory and advisory board committee meeting schedule has been circulated, which includes the O.P.P. Police Detachment Board with meetings set for February 19, April 26, June 18, and August 20th. So that would be 4 meetings. The life of the board is coincidental, obviously, with the life of municipal council, and the next municipal election is October 26, 2026. So that's why I see sort of a deliberate collapsing of the 4 meetings, perhaps within a shorter time frame than we would have done, for example, in 2025. Becky, did you want to make any comments on the scheduling?
Through the vice chair to the board, actually, no, you just nailed it. So I just wanted to make sure that the board members were aware that the schedule was built to end in August, just in preparations for the 2026 elections, while also still making that legislative requirement of the 4 meetings per year for the board.
All right, thank you. So that would make our next meeting then February 19th, 2026. And some, but not everyone, might know that the secretary to the board, Becky O'Hara, this will be her last meeting as secretary to the board, because she has accepted being the clerk for Sterling Rodden. And this is a huge loss for us, or anybody who's worked with Becky. But we're delighted for her on a personal level. And I would ask for a motion to formally thank Becky for her exemplary service to the board while she has served the board. Can I have someone move that? Bill, seconded by Sarah. And I know everyone's in favor. Thank you, Becky, very much. We'll miss you. Adjournment then is at what time?
Oh, sorry, Casey, we still need the motion for that the schedule be received.
We do. Can I have a motion that the 2026 schedule be received for our board meetings? Moved by Bill, seconded by Robert. All in favor? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. Can I have a mover? Sarah, seconded by Robert. All in favor? That's carried. What time is it, Becky?
11:43.
Thank you. And thank you for your attendance, Staff McKinnon, today to assist us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert and Sarah. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Becky, for everything.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I was worried